Welcome everybody to our latest Business Support Live panel discussion. We have a great panel here. We're going to be talking about HR and staffing in particular. Do get involved and leave your questions in the Facebook comments box or on Zoom, and I'll try my best to put them to our panel. So here we have Barbara Kolosinska, who is Director of C&M Recruitment. We have Claire Steiner, who is an HR and talent professional, and both of these ladies are on the board of the ITT. And we also have Phaure, who is owner of Blue Cube Corporate Travel Management. So welcome all. Thank you very much for joining me. So, thought we'd kick off. I'm sure some people who are tuning in might think it's a bit of an odd time to be discussing the term recruitment. Obviously, there's a lot of turbulence at the moment, and we're still in very uncertain times. But I suppose I wanted to, we'll get on to that in a minute. But if you first will kind of start off by just giving a little bit of an update on who you are, who you work with, the shape of your own teams at the moment, and how you're finding things, if that's okay. I don't know if you want to kick off, Basha?
Yes, hello. Hi, everybody. Yes, I suppose recruitment is a bit of a strange word for all of you out there at the moment, but for me it's not, because I run a recruitment business specialising in travel. We have really felt it, as I'm sure you can all appreciate. It's been a very tough 7 weeks. The industry, we're at the coalface. We're our benchmark, I suppose, of what's going on out there. Everybody stopped recruiting. Everybody froze. All the roles were put on hold. All the offers we had were withdrawn, etc. But then we obviously started to get through it. The government put some fantastic schemes in place. Personally, running a business, I furloughed 85 to 90% of my staff. I still got a couple of key members where we're ticking things over. Obviously the FD, which we need to make sure the finances are in place like every other business. We are running a business just like a tour operator, a TMC, a media company, and so on. A salesperson and another accounts person as well. I'm beginning to see it's beginning to calm down a bit. There was initial panic, just like after 09/11, just after the recession. We've been in operation for 22 years, so we've literally seen a lot of things happen over this time. Nothing to this extent. It's unprecedented. I mean, I don't know how many times we've said this word over the last 7 weeks. But we are a benchmark and a barometer of all you travel companies out there, be it a TMC, a tour operator, a travel agency, an OTA, a cruise line. But we probably felt it almost first because we could see that everyone was beginning to put back and freeze a lot of their recruitment. So that's where we are at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Basha. And Claire.
Hi, thanks, Mel. Morning, everybody. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Claire Steiner. I have been doing HR and talent for nearly 30 years. The last 15 have been as a freelancer, and the majority of my clients are in the travel and tourism space. I've worked in companies as well as HR support. But what I've seen, I think really, and we talk about unprecedented being one of the words at the moment, I think one of the next words is furlough. And so I've spent the last, more than 7 weeks supporting most of my clients in what they need to do to protect their businesses and protect their staff. And I think, everyone's doing their best at the moment to try and do that. As Barbara said, the government have put in an awful lot of financial support. However, for some people it isn't hitting the mark and it's not quite right and not working well enough. But we're doing the best that we can. And I think, the furlough itself, we've had more and more questions answered over the last few weeks, and people are kind of at ease with that now and understand that now. And now we're starting to see people planning for what happens as we come out of furlough. And that will happen over the next few weeks. So what my attention with my clients is switching to that now in terms of forward planning for recovery. And we're all hoping that comes sooner rather than later.
Okay, thanks, Claire. And how about you, Mel? Obviously, you run a corporate management company. I think.
And so again, for those that don't know me, I'm Phaure. I'm one of the owner directors at Blue Cube Travel. And very much following on from what Claire has said, we furloughed nearly 90% of our staff, but we're in daily contact with all of them. it was quite distressing for all of us at the beginning, I think, for me being the person that had to do it, and for those on the receiving end of it. It certainly wasn't something we wanted to do. It was something we had to do. But in addition, we're in touch with all of our clients, and they're literally chomping at the bit to travel. I was speaking to somebody the other day, and he said, this is the longest he hasn't been on an aircraft in over 25 years. And he's just desperate to get back to some normality. And that's the same that we're hearing from lots of people. So I do expect it to be a very gradual return. And probably not until sometime early next year, seeing some kind of normality. But we are already sort of planning our sort of comeback, as it were. And, looking on a positive spin of it as well, we've actually just like 2 days ago, we were contacted by a potential client for new business. So companies are out there, they're still wanting to travel, they're still planning to travel in the future. And so for us, it's about looking after our staff, that the ones that are on furlough and the ones that are still currently working for us, and then working out a plan about how to get them all back in stage by stage over the next however many months.
Yeah. Oh, Mel, I think we've lost your video.
Yes,
there you go.
An interruption there.
Just a break. Okay, so I suppose the first question, as I mentioned earlier, is probably, I know it's probably very hard to say, really, given the diversity of the travel businesses that you'll each work with, but what can you, as an owner manager at the moment, be kind of doing to start planning ahead at the moment, the furlough scheme obviously comes to an end at the end of June. That's hopefully going to be extended, I think, is the hope of most people. But, it could be, I suppose, that in a few months' time, we are getting back to offices and getting a little bit back to normal. So what would your advice be, Claire or Basha?
Can I speak? Is that what, Claire? Yeah. I think, first of all, the furlough scheme has been a lifeline, just to echo what you said, Mel, wasn't it? We were at the beginning, it was, oh my God, what's going on? But it is an absolute lifeline. It saved us all, which I'm excited about. Secondly, now the panic is over, like I said, I think people are speaking to their clients. Mel, you're speaking to your clients. We're speaking to all our clients, which are travel companies. We're also speaking to our candidates, be it furloughed and unfurloughed. So that's what we are aiming to do at the moment. We're also finding that we are managing to we speak to a lot of owner, manager, senior decision makers. We're also having the time to be able to speak to them, and they have got time to speak to us in a lot more detail than they usually do. Because of that, I'm also having the time to think about the future, re-strategize, to put different business plans in place, to look at our businesses in the future. Is this exactly how we want our business to look? None of our businesses are going to look like this in the future. The world has changed. It's going to be a different landscape. Be it we're going to have smaller premises, we're going to have more flexibility, there's going to be more job shares. Working from home, we have that model anyway, but a lot of companies are probably going to be looking at that in more detail. People are going to be working from home more, and therefore not going into the office more. So I think now is a really, really good time to be looking at the short to mid to long term. 6 weeks ago, we were living hand to mouth, day by day. I think now we've got the time. Next week's going to be amazing. We're going to be finding out from Boris exactly what the plan is to slowly come out of the lockdown. I think once that happens, and once we can see what the plan is, it's already happening in Spain and Germany and so on. I think once we've got that, it's going to be some optimism, and we can see there's less uncertainty. We're over the peak, which he said last night, which is amazing. So I think as a business and businesses, this is exactly what we need to be doing. Let's do it now when we've got the time to think about. We've got the brain power as business leaders and owners. We've got the time, the resource to think about how we want our businesses to look, both from a staff. We're not talking about recruitment. It's not about finding staff, and it's about your talent, your people, nurturing the people you've got. Is it the team you really want now? Are the people the right people? Do we need to upskill, change skill, and so on? So that's what we're talking about, is looking at the future. Is it the right team, the right structure that you're going to want in place in 2, 3, 4 months? and in a year's time, that Mel said, it's probably when we're going to be back to normal, some kind of normality.
Yeah, no, I agree. Sorry, well, do you want to?
No, you carry on, Claire.
I was just going to add on to that. So I think, Barbara Basher, I call you Basher. I think, you made some really good points about that. And yes, of course, a lot of businesses are looking forward. I do think we have to be realistic. I think the chances are that we'll see a staged return for businesses in this country. And the likelihood is that travel will be at the end of that. I think we have to be honest about that. But it doesn't mean that, as you said, we shouldn't be looking at it now and planning for now. I think there are a number of things that business owners and HR people need to think about and are thinking about at the moment. And I think, a lot of that's to do with, the staff that you have at the moment. So you have a number of staff who weren't furloughed, who have been working, who may be feeling a bit burnt out, who may be actually...
resentful, Claire. They might be a bit resentful.
They might be resentful that they've had to work and the other people who've been on furlough. Then you have people on furlough who are actually probably desperate to get back to work, and feel a bit jealous of the people that have actually managed to stay and work and are worried about their jobs because they were furloughed and the others weren't furloughed. And what if there's redundancy? Does that automatically mean that they're going to be out? Which it doesn't. It shouldn't do. And I think also, there's that whole issue about what people have been doing on furlough as well. Have they taken this opportunity to reskill themselves? Are there skills that you want to have in your business? And actually, what are you doing to really encourage those people to stay in touch with your business and engage with your business, even though they're not allowed to do any work, they're not allowed to, have done anything under the rules of the scheme, but still feel a part of that team. So when they come back, and probably a bit like a mother returning to work after maternity, how are they going to slot back in and learn about your business? So I think there's a lot of things like that that businesses need to be considering at the moment, along with what the new normal of an office is going to look like. And you're quite right, Bash, you're going to see people who maybe have shift work for office shift, so 1 week you're in the office, the next week you're working from home, or maybe 2 days of the week you work from home. And I think that's great, because I think many businesses have pushed back at flexible working, and I think now this is one of the sort of the golden parts of this, or the silver linings of this, as it's proved that we can all get on and work remotely. But saying that, I do think a lot of people can't wait to get back into the office and just have a cup of coffee with their colleagues. Yeah,
that's exactly what I was going to say. I was on a call the other week, and people were on there concerned about their staff, whether they would actually want to return to the office, and have they got quite used to working at home. But certainly from the feedback of our staff, everybody is literally like clawing at the door to get back into the office, harping on about the good old days when we're all in there together. And maybe we're lucky, we had quite a nice office environment, so it was a fun place to be. But so everyone is really, really keen to get back, and most certainly, and I think in between now, when you talked about staff that you've chosen to furlough over those that you've kept on, it's about reassuring those furloughed staff that they've been furloughed for a reason, just particularly because their job, if it's reservations, is just non-existent, whereas the finance guy, he's still got loads of stuff to do. So it's kind of just sort of being aware of how people are feeling, and explaining the reasons why you're actually doing something, and not because you've kind of picked them because they're the worst person, and actually they'll be the first people that you start getting back on once those phones start ringing again.
It's all about communication, isn't it? It's making sure that communication with your team, and that's what we communicate daily. We've got WhatsApp groups and stuff, and we do a weekly quiz, which everybody's doing. But when we're speaking to candidates, obviously our end product to customers, candidates and clients, when we're speaking to candidates, not people that work for us at C&M, the ones that are feeling hard done by, Jen, that you said, or the ones that aren't feeling that loved by their employers, are the ones that feel that they've been pushed out, the communication hasn't been very good, that they feel that they weren't treated very well. And I think that's the key. The ones that are going to have been treated well are the ones that are going to remember. The ones that haven't been treated well are the ones that we're speaking to that actually want to go.
And I think that works as a reversal as well.
Absolutely.
For the employee, how maybe they have behaved prior to being furloughed, or whether they're still working, whatever. And I've heard people sort of telling me that they've had conversations with their furloughed employees, sort of, you know, demanding to want to know what they're going to do about their holiday pay and entitlement. And I know that is a thing and a question that needs to be answered, but really right now, you know, I think we can all, that should be like the least of our worries, and the fact that we could possibly come back to a job and a decent job would be great. So I think we kind of need to sort of see the balance from both sides, from the employer and the employee, and have an understanding from both.
Definitely.
Yeah. Just very quickly to circle back, I think, Claire, to your point about training and upskilling yourself. I think under the furlough scheme, we have been told that you are okay to undertake training. You know, to what extent can an employer sort of insist that the person on furlough kind of takes part in some new training? Or, I mean, obviously it depends on probably on your relationship, but, you know, is it something that you can sort of insist upon as an employer to ask somebody to kind of take part in a specific course or something? Or is there much guidance on that, whether you should be sort of leaving your furloughed employees alone?
Guidance, like a lot of the guidance, is slightly open to interpretation. I would say you can't insist that they do it. I think again, going back to the point that Mel made, you know, this is a lot about how people are responding to each other, and the flexibility they're sharing with each other. So, you know, I think if for instance you have a new system that you've been planned and you're introducing during this time, and you've decided this is a good time to put that on board, it might be a need that you want people to have a, you know, when they do come back into the office, to be able to not come back in and go, oh my God, this is a new system and I don't know what I'm doing. And so I think, you know, you have to look at each case individually. I think, you know, the scheme, the scope of the training, I think, was also to allow people to maybe look at upskilling themselves personally as well whilst they're on furlough. And people are taking the opportunity to learn new skills. And with that also comes risk. And we were talking before this meeting about that, you know, that some people may see this as an opportunity to reskill themselves, to think about maybe a change in career, hopefully within the industry. We do obviously want to keep in the industry, but you know, there's these opportunities that are happening, and I know we'll come on to it a bit later, but you know, the new look workplace will require new skills. I've had a lot of chat with younger people who are at the start of their careers, or maybe even still at university and college, who are very nervous about what they're studying and whether or not that's going to be good enough. And I think, you know, we need to sort of concentrate and look at the skills that we need going forward. So time again, as it's great now for people to look at that, but also part of the planning that the you know, companies will be doing is around the skills gaps and what the increasing need for certain skills, like, you know, the ability to present online, you know, those sorts of things.
I don't think as an employer you can, you're the HR expert, Claire, but you can't force people to teach, you know, learn new skills or anything like that. However, as an employer, we are putting lots of different training courses. They're able for my team to do, and it's the same with many different travel companies. And I think you a lot of your members of staff, not me particularly, but you see the ones that really want to upskill and the ones that don't. And I think somebody recently compared it to a football team or a sportsman. All the athletes that are at home, they're still having to train, they're still training their bodies. And I think if people aren't training their minds and working that grey matter, they're quite quickly going to go forget how to do things. And they come back into the office, and the speed, and so it's really important just to be training your mind, really, more than anything else. If you are furloughed, of course, if you're not furloughed, then you're working already.
Just very quick, sorry, I was actually going to come to you, Mel, anyway. I suppose, kind of as an employer yourself, what are some of the ways in which you are keeping in touch with the staff who are furloughed, but also are there any specific ways that you're kind of keeping morale up among the team that is existing?
Yeah, you know, I was going to say, you know, it's great, all of this training and sort of, you know, and I think also we've got to acknowledge that actually some people just aren't in the right mindset at the moment to sort of like be training, because actually it's difficult to get even some, when you've got nothing to get up for in the morning, it's difficult to get some routine into your life, you know. I mean, I've got things that I need to be doing, but I'm still trying to sort of structure my day a little. But you know, I'd be lying to say that it's not a challenge at times. But I think what's been really important as well, I mean, we've just got something as simple as a WhatsApp group with our entire workforce, and it's actually keeping that camaraderie going that we would normally have in the office on a day-to-day. So I hate the word banter, but office banter, you know, and it's a bit like that. And yesterday, you know, I fired out a few pictures of me with perms back in the 80s, and I was like, you know, anyone got anything? And there was all sorts of stuff lying around, and we were having a good laugh about it. And then, you know, by the end of the evening, people were sending pictures of the rainbows and things. But, you know, for me, it's very much we're trying to keep that sense of community that we've got at Blue Cube. Everybody continuing to talk to each other, whether it's, you know, just these, you know, random jokes or how are you doing, or you know, and we pick up the phone to each other as well. But actually what I've found, surprisingly so, but maybe because it's WhatsApp and it's not Snapchat or something like that, actually the younger ones are less engaged. So which maybe they're just still in bed, and I don't know, that's maybe been a bit too judgmental. I'm basing it on my own like youth that I've got living with me here. You know, but it's actually it's the sort of like the older of the workforce, the sort of like 30 and upwards, if you can call 30.
That's young, Mel.
I know it's still young. I'm 50. That's young. I'm still counting that as young. But you know, but then the sort of like, you know, the really quite young ones, the sort of like 18 to, you know, 23, that sort of, that they're much less engaged, which I was quite surprised about, actually.
Is there any ways you've thought about that you can kind of perhaps contact them in a better way? Yeah,
well, you know, I mean, we've been I've picked up the phone to them actually and had a conversation with them, and they're absolutely fine, but I think they spend a lot of their life online anyway, talking to their other friends. So they're keeping themselves occupied.
They don't
away from work. Yeah. Whereas I suppose, I don't know, maybe
no different to them, is it?
Yeah, yeah, it's just no different.
I think I think I've made the point that, you know, it's a lot of, obviously I've worked with a you know, a large range of different businesses, and what surprised, well, maybe it hasn't surprised me as much, but to pick up on the point you made about the younger generation, I think for them this is the first big shock to their system that they've had to deal with. Now it's a big shock to all of us. I'm not, you know, I'm not being blasé about that. I'm not, but I think, you know, a lot of us, I mean, Barbara mentioned 9/11. You know, those, Jen, I'm sure you're too young, but the three of us certainly remember. Really, and you know, and all the sort of the things that we've had to deal with in the past. You know, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the strikes of the 70s and what happened then, and you know, all the, you know, the last two big financial crashes and how we've had to come through that. So I think there's a certain resilience that we have already developed, that the younger generation are currently developing, and it's fun to see that actually they're now calling this the C generation. So we've had, you know, X, Y, Z, and there's this new sort of phrase around, you know, the COVID generation, and the people who kind of are coming into the workplace at the moment, that this is, you know, this is a new thing that they never prepared themselves for. And you know, when I go out and do a lot of talks with the ITT Future You program, you know, we talk about resilience as being one of the key things that this industry needs, and the ability to manage change. My goodness, this is an opportunity to develop that and learn that. So I think, you know, the first couple of weeks, the people I've spoken to found it really difficult. Really, some of them also maybe are in flats on their own, or with their own in a flat, not at home with their, you know, their families. And they kind of got into this normal, and they're beginning to sort of come through it, and you know, but they're also, interestingly enough, with all the pre-COVID world, research said that young people wanted flexible working, they wanted to be able to work in their own time. Yeah, I'm hearing from them, they're the ones who are really more keen to get back into the office and have and get on the tube and go to Costa, that sort of stuff. So it's really flipped things on its head in that respect. I'm personally finding with people I've spoken to.
Yeah, and maybe people are realising what they value and what's important to them, and maybe what they thought were their beliefs beforehand have actually changed, you know, quite dramatically when they found themselves in a situation they didn't expect.
I think everyone is. I think everyone's really reevaluating
Yeah.
the importance of not just from a professional perspective, but personally as well, and what you take for granted and what are your priorities. And I think it doesn't matter what age you are, be it Gen C, Gen X, baby boomers. I think we're all doing that, really.
Yeah. I think you were saying yesterday, Basha, that obviously in the travel industry, we're so used to traveling. It is, it's a bit of an adjustment, isn't it? It sounds very spoilt, but it is a bit of an adjustment getting used to not, being, especially on the road people, reps and PMs and stuff. It's a big old change,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And something Claire just said about people being in flats and what Mel said as well. Yeah, I mean, it's all well and good. Yeah, it'd be amazing if all your staff would be at home and they'd be behind their laptops, learning how to be developers and all these different training courses. But this is a weird, strange, crazy time for us all. And I think the key thing is absolutely is the engagement and the communication. And don't know, I'm sure you do now. You do weekly Zooms or quizzes and stuff. We do the same. We have our Friday beer o'clock at 4 o'clock, and I give an update about what's been going on. And that's a small part of it. The rest of it is just a bit of fun. And I think tonight we've been doing a scavenger hunt and stuff. Just fun and engaging. And we also have a WhatsApp group that it's just jokes and banter. And it's really important to keep that going.
I know that we at TTG actually we have a weekly sort of TED talk. Dan Pierce calls it on a Friday.
What does he call it?
He calls it a TED talk. Where he just basically, everyone is invited to dial in, even those who are furloughed. And actually, thankfully, most of the team does do that, and which is a really good sign of, people wanting to remain engaged.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody on the health of the business and all of that kind of thing, which is, I think, really positive. And that transparency, I think, is very reassuring for people. We have a question actually on Facebook from Julie Croucher from Travels with Jules, who says, any advice for a very small independent ATO agent? I have one employee who has been working from home, and I am too, of course. We cannot furlough, is very busy talking to clients and sorting all the admin, so can't benefit from having 80% of wages paid and have no income for the next few months, and have had to return some commission to. Any help available from the government to pay our wages as we help to keep working? Well, I know that ABTA has written in the last couple of days, they've announced that they've written to the government to request a more kind of flexible furloughing model, because, as we keep saying, we've heard a few times, travel is quite unusual in that sense, that you can't just walk away from your travel agency, close it down and open back up again when the world comes back. There's a lot of, really important work to be done. I don't know if you guys have any insight into how optimistic you are that we can expect any kind of change, and also whether we can expect the furlough scheme to be extended, so we're not faced with this cliff edge come the end of June where you're sort of faced with having to suddenly pay wages again, or whether you can or not afford that.
My personal sorry, Val, carry on. You say first.
No, I was going to say, well, it's very difficult, isn't it? I mean, we've furloughed nearly 90% of our staff, and the ones that are remaining, they're all on a reduced salary. They're all still, when I say working 5 days a week, it's not your normal sort of 5 days a week. They're sort of dipping in and out as and when they need to. But they've, thankfully for us, they've also taken a reduction in their pay, which has allowed us to stretch our finances further because of the whole uncertainty of it. I hope the government extend it, but my worry is, as a business owner, that I think a large proportion of the UK population will feel some normality back in their lives when shops begin to open again and things like that. But for us working in the travel industry, it's going to be a much longer haul. So whereas other people have got some sense of normality, we'll still be possibly sitting in a similar sort of situation. I'd like to think the government will extend it. I think if they do extend it, I think actually they might reduce the amount. So rather than paying 80%, they might pay 50 or 60%, which actually I'm surprised they didn't do for June, because they haven't got a bottomless pit of money either. So that's gonna run out at some point, right? And I think, in regard to, I'm sorry, I can't remember if you said that lady was a business owner or if she worked for the business.
I think she owns it, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's I suppose it's about applying for all the things that are available to you, whether it's a CBILS loan or, you know, a VAT thing, or you know, there's grants and things available depending.
Yeah.
We've got an office in Glasgow, and there's different grants that are available to Scottish based companies that aren't available down here. And it's doing a little bit of research really, but there are ways and means, but I think it's just really, really tough.
It is, and unfortunately, I think there are some businesses that kind of fall through the gaps of what the government schemes are at the moment. And hopefully, you know, you've got a good accountant that can help you to sort of navigate what's available to you. I agree with everything Mel said. For my personal opinion, I think a best case scenario for our sector would be, you know, I mentioned earlier, I think there'll be a staggered return with industries. And I think that they may allow, maybe albeit at a reduced rate, for the furlough to continue maybe a bit longer for those industries that they won't be coming back as quickly as the others. But, you know, the associations, ABTA and the, you know, the Business Travel Association and many of the other associations are all really joining forces to try and push the government to look at our sector as a completely unique one in what we're going through at the moment. So, you know, we can only support them as much as possible and you know, hope and pray that happens. And you know, as we've all said, you know, we know people want to get back to travel, but until they've got an idea of how we're going to protect ourselves and social distancing and you know, borders coming down or staying up, then you know, that's going to be very difficult over the next few weeks and well, months probably. So yeah, we can only wait and see.
But I think the key thing is you do have to maybe have uncomfortable conversations with people that are continuing to work with for you, and you know, have an open and frank conversation and see if they are willing to work for less. And you know, it's what we've had to do, and we've been fortunate. But I think, you know, for the longer term sort of goal, so that you come out the other side of this, you have to be sort of ruthless to a degree, just to try and save your business, which will ultimately save all of those people's jobs. So
absolutely,
maybe you just need to.
Yeah, I think you need to remember the whole point of what the furlough scheme is actually ultimately all about, which is to protect jobs as much as they can. So, you know, what an HMRC will be auditing companies to check that the furlough scheme has been applied in the right way. And I think, you know, what's really key here is that, as Mel said, uncomfortable conversations, but, you know, and I'm going to say redundancies, but, you know, redundancy should be your last option. Furlough, if it's still available, should be the one before that. But before that, if you do need to have staff, such as Jules, was it Julia who put the question?
Yeah, Julia.
No, that you need to explore every other way that you can try and save money in your business. And you know, whether you've got one person working for you or 100 people working for you, you should, again, communication is key. Have human, open, transparent conversations with them, because for people who really want to save their jobs, you'll be amazed at some of the creative ways and the ideas that they will come up with, that they're prepared to help you to hopefully help themselves. So, you know, I think just keep that communication going.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, from a, you know, somebody who owns a business as well, I'm not taking any salary at all at the moment, which is not ideal. And, you know, we've had to make changes at home. And I think as well, you know, but be honest with your employees and, you know, tell them what you're doing personally as well to sort of like help the effort and the end goal. And show them that, you know, you completely understand it's difficult. It's difficult for everybody. You know, and we keep hearing it, we're all in this together, but you know, we kind of are, and we've all got to try and support each other, whether it employee, employer, whatever, and to get to the end goal.
Yeah.
Just to go back to, I agree wholeheartedly about what we have both said, but is it Julie or Julia on the
Julie Croucher, but her
Julia, I know Julie actually. It's exactly the same for us. We've got majority of my staff on furlough. We've got a tiny bit of resource, and we are waiting for booking. So if I was a tour operator, it'd be booking, but I'm waiting for work to come in, and I need to have that balance ready for when I can bring people back from furlough, ready to work on those roles. And it's the juggling act and having a balance of having the, so it's having the cash flow forecast and having enough cash, like Mel says, and I was going to use the words honest transparency, being transparent with the business so they know exactly where you are. And it changes from day to day to day. Where we are now is very different to where we were 7 weeks ago. We actually had, before the furlough scheme came on, we put people on temporary layoff, which is it's an old-fashioned phrase, isn't it, Claire? Where it's basically a sabbatical, and most people just were going on that. And obviously, when they brought up the furlough job retention scheme, it was hallelujah. We've actually got some cash coming here for the team. So things are changing. It's about honesty, transparency, and being fair and reasonable. And exactly like Mel says, be honest with your guys. But it's tough. It's tough knowing when you're going to need extra resource to be able to deal with the business that's coming in. But I'm hoping that the various associations, like Claire says, they're sticking together, and we're going to get some support from the government.
Does anyone know how quickly you can sort of bring someone back out of furlough? Can you do that immediately, or I know somebody has to be on furlough for at least 3 weeks, don't they?
It's 3 weeks, but they're looking at there's some flexibility, I believe. I've just heard. I've just got an email about an hour ago. I think there's some flexibility on that now, Claire. They're looking at making it flexible.
Yeah, I think, at the moment, part of it's to do with the payment of it as well. So from the HMRC guidance, but at the moment, it's a minimum of 3 weeks, and that hasn't changed up until this morning. I mean, it may, as I said, I read things every day, and
yeah, exactly.
So I think there are some businesses that are using that to have almost shift furloughs. So some businesses will have members of the team in for 3 weeks, and then they'll for 3 weeks, and other people come back. So that's a way of keeping people engaged. Other people, obviously, like businesses we've been speaking about, are all furloughed. I think in terms of bringing people back, every business who put staff on furlough should have had a written agreement with that person, where it will clearly state the terms of when people will come back. So it'll be, with notice from the company, or when the scheme ends, or, given guidance around that. I would say best practice is not to say we'll see you tomorrow morning. And again, we go back to what we talked about, forward planning. I think there may be some people that you may start to phase your furloughed staff back in as well. So you may find that you need maybe, not only half the staff coming back in slowly, and you may want to phase that through. But give them a little bit of notice, because people are going to need to just get head turned around a bit. But it's up to the employer when that furlough ends.
I do think it's probably going to be staggered. I can't remember if it was you, Mel, or Claire saying. I mean, it's great that they've extended it to June. The government know what they're doing, sort of. And I think it will probably be staggered, because if it goes back down to 0 for July, August, then what is the whole point of the scheme? All those billions of pounds. So I think maybe 60% and 40%. That's what I'm thinking might happen, but who knows.
That actually brings us on a little bit, Claire. I think you had a bit of insight into sort of what employers can perhaps do in terms of assuming we will be returning to offices fairly soon. I suppose there's the health and safety consideration. Do you genuinely think that there's going to have to be social distancing? How do you operate, if you have to go in a high rise and get in a lift, or people traveling, people feeling comfortable as an employee getting on a tube or getting on a train? How would you best sort of approach that as an employer?
I think there's going to be a lot of individual cases that employers are going to need to consider. I think, one, we have to obviously wait for Public Health England to let us know about things like social distancing. I think certainly some of the clients I'm speaking to are already thinking about, when they do bring people back into the office, how they can ensure some form of social distancing, but also things like, making sure that there's additional cleaning, and there's more, help for, things like, anti-bac and things like that available for the staff. But, they also need to understand that there will be members of staff that are nervous about coming back into work. They may also be in a vulnerable group as well, or looking after someone in a vulnerable group. So there may be still until we get through and we have hopefully a vaccine or whatever, that there are going to be some people that are going to struggle. So again, looking at flexibility, and it may be that for instance, with companies with staff who rely on public transport, they allow them to travel at quieter hours, so that again they maybe stagger those things for people who don't want to be on a tube or on a bus, you know, or on a train at peak hour when we're all, you know, in the old days, you know, crammed up against each other. So I think there will be a lot of individual cases around that. You know, the employers have a duty of care anyway. And that duty of care is even bigger now with the threat of COVID still out there. Yes, we're through the peak. We've got to do everything we can to avoid a second peak. And again, you know, the government and Public Health England will be looking at providing us with better guidance. But I think employers will have to make some real considerations around that based on the advice that we are given. So again, you know, Barbara mentioned about smaller offices in the future, but a lot of people still have offices, but it may be that they actually will look at, you know, as I said earlier, maybe having half the team coming in so you can have more social distancing in the office while the other half continue to work at home. And who those are, again, will be down to conversations and awareness by you and by them of needing to talk about, you know, how they're feeling and their personal situations.
Yeah.
And actually, Claire, that might work really well, because if companies are thinking about reducing not their head count, but the size of their offices, they can't just give up their leases straight away. It might be a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. But if social distancing is still going to be the norm, which it's going to be inevitably, then having that sort of almost like hot desking, you know, you've got, I don't know, 2,000 square feet and you've got a certain amount of people usually in there. If you halve that and people hot desk, at least then people are having the opportunity to socially distance, but also they're also trialing what it would be like if you've got half your team in, half your team out, and sort of hot desking model, which works a lot in the home working.
Out of interest, actually, have you guys heard of any businesses who are already considering getting rid of their office altogether because people have adjusted so well to home working, and that's an ongoing expense that they could perhaps
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Ah,
yeah. It's definitely conversations people are having.
Yeah.
Again, that would be a bit of a difficult one to approach with your employees, though, because so many people enjoy going to the office.
That's a whole new model of skill set, culture.
Yeah, it affects so much, doesn't it?
It's a whole new world.
Yeah.
Tough days. But yeah,
I can imagine that.
I miss people.
I do. I love going into the office, as sad as that sounds. So
no, it doesn't.
Certainly from Blue Cube, we won't be getting rid of our office.
I mean, could you imagine some kind of in between where perhaps you might scale down smaller? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or going to serviced offices.
Yeah, for like 1 day a week, everybody meets up a few times a week or something, rather than every day.
I don't think I've spoken to any client who's thinking of getting rid of their offices completely. What I do think is that middle ground where they will look at more flexible working, and actually there are some really good benefits out of that and opportunities out of that. You know, so there's a whole sort of around, you know, a lot of people returning to work, you know, irrespective of COVID, and I'm not talking about now, but, you know, returning mums or people who've been on long-term sick and maybe want to change their hours, they have care responsibilities at home, and have found it very difficult in the past to find jobs where they can get that flexibility. And, you know, and I think there's real opportunities for getting some amazing talent back into our sector, because we can now demonstrate and it has been demonstrated that we can.
It's possible, and that's always been a bit of a not bane, but it's been quite difficult in our industry to promote flexibility, home working, job shares, returning mothers, and so on. I think now this is creating one of the good things that's coming out of it is showing us what is possible with technology and so on. And absolutely, there's some fantastic talent out there that want to work part time because they are mothers. They want to job share or have them work from home. So I think this is showing us that it is possible. It is possible, and who can do it as well.
Yeah, and even just allowing people to perhaps move, you know, further afield and not having to have necessarily these concentrations in cities. You know, anyway, that's another conversation. Geography. That's my geography degree coming through. Sorry. So sorry, we are kind of running out of time, you guys. It's been great. We've obviously covered a lot. But I suppose a good question, maybe one for you, Claire, to end with is, you know, if you were I don't know whether we'll have many sort of prospective, employees watching, but if you're looking to enter the travel industry now, I mean, would you still recommend it? I know we've always been having this huge push to get more talent into the industry, and
absolutely. No. Yeah, listen, this industry, it may take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to get back to really big numbers again, but it is still, as we all know, the greatest industry to work in. I've done some interviews recently with student associations, and I've said to them, listen, you know, it may be that you knew what you wanted to do when you went and started doing your degree, you knew which part of tourism you wanted to work in, and maybe you have to wait a bit longer to get there, but you might, you know, there still will be opportunities for you to go out and get some experience and develop your skills. And again, going back to what we've said all the way through this about the opportunity that this time is giving us is to look at the skills that we're all developing. You know, as I said, there's things like the digital skills, the technology, the use of technology that we've all had to embrace, you know, and I think so they need to sort of think about what additional USPs they can offer a new employer, and as a younger person, often coming out into the industry, they can really embrace this opportunity to develop the skills that employers are going to want over the next few years.
Yeah, I think you said earlier as well in one of our previous conversations, Claire, about you know, perhaps being a bit more open-minded to taking a part-time job, or you know, having a slightly different approach to it, and maybe also looking for jobs in domestic tourism, where you know, and then to get experience to then move over to outbound eventually. So it's that flexible.
But also, just quickly, what I think is that although I think there'll be a steady trickle when it first, but once it does pick off, it will go off with an absolute almighty bang, because you know, we, the great British public, love going on holiday, for starters, and again, then talking to all of our corporate clients, you know, they're absolutely desperate. There's no sign of like video conferencing superseding like sort of touching of the flesh and all that kind of stuff. They want to get on planes and they want to go. So as soon as, you know, throughout the world, these sort of bans are lifted and, you know, there's a lot more free movement, the industry is going to be going through the roof. I think we're going to be busier than ever, and we're going to need all of those lovely new people, and all of the people that we've currently got. So you're going to be really busy, Barbara.
We're going to bring new people in. Yeah, no, that's great.
An interesting thing is that obviously, sadly, in the last week, there's been announcements from obviously BA and Ryanair about huge redundancies, and I'm sure there are more to come, unfortunately. I suppose very quick question on that is, if you were one of those people, you know, if you'd worked for one of those companies, could you expect to perhaps be taken back on by your existing company in the next few months? Or do you think it's going to be a case of people having to start from scratch and look for completely new jobs? It's a bit of a curveball.
You know what, I sort of look at that slightly, sometimes I think, is this like a bit of shedding for some of these larger companies, just to get rid of maybe some dead wood, or
old contracts,
that type of stuff, because I really do have great faith that, you know, and as an employer, if you find a good member of staff and they're in your team, you will do everything in your power to keep that person on board. When I sort of look back to the sort of recession, you know, back in 2007, 2008, you know, our phones were barely ringing, but we didn't make a single member of staff redundant because it took us far too long to find them. And when you've got good people, you want to keep them at all, at all costs, kind of thing. So I'm sort of a little bit skeptical when I sort of hear, 12,000, 3,000, and I think maybe they're just sort of shedding a little bit rather than anything else, really.
Can I answer?
On
that, I agree with Mel. On the bigger, I can't really comment on the really big ones like BA and so on, and I think it's a shedding stroke restructuring exercise. On the smaller, sorry, Claire.
So I said there's also the commercial side. For the really big companies, there's a big commercial,
I think on the smaller, SMEs and slightly bigger, be it the TMC sector, tour ops here in the UK, not necessarily airlines. I'm not hearing of many redundancies yet. There's a few, but of course you can't be made redundant when you're on furlough. So wait till the furlough scheme ends, and I guarantee there's going to be some redundancies. I do think, yeah, usually it's an opportunity to share, to get rid of dead wood. Occasionally, if there's not the business there, people are going to be made redundant. Sorry, and that's going to get churn.
Yeah, the thing is, you can be made redundant. Yeah, you can. But I think, but that's not
my mistake.
But no, that's fine. But I think very few people are doing that, because obviously one of the things is you need to follow a fair process, and the whole point of the furlough is to try and avoid redundancies.
Try and retain. Okay, there you go.
What I am seeing at the moment is a few companies are having to tail their staff. Certain members of the staff, it's not often, not all of them, that their jobs may be at risk. And a lot of that, sadly, might be because of the way companies have had to learn how to work, that it's highlighted that certain roles maybe aren't as necessary in the future as they are now. So I don't want people to panic about it, but, you know, and because everyone has to follow a fair process anyway. When it comes to redundancies.
And actually, if they can go on the furlough scheme, then why not do the decent thing and put them on furlough while...
Not worry about that.
And I'm sure there will be employers though as well who unfortunately will have to make redundant good members of the team as well, you know, just because they, like you say, the cash just isn't there.
Business,
and they have to
well, it's survival of the fittest, and you have to look after the business. Do you want the business to be there or not? And unfortunately,
and maybe Claire, you can shed a bit more light on this, but for my, you know, if the furlough scheme ends, then my understanding is that we can then sort of put people on unpaid leave, but after a period of 4 weeks, they can then request redundancy. And that's actually when it could become a problem for companies, because they actually might not be able to afford to make those people redundant. But there are government schemes that will actually loan you the money to pay those redundancies, so you don't go insolvent. And then you have something like 3 to 6 years or something to pay it back.
So I think, yes, there's all of that is protecting. And again, you know, we want to protect the jobs, and it's about, you know, redundancy is about the jobs, I think, as well. It's not about the people. About a job becoming redundant. And so, yes, unfortunately, there will be some casualties. We know that. Hopefully, you know, it'll all be done in the fair process. Then, you know, there will be, you know, Barbara's saying some green shoots, as you like to call them, and will be opportunities. So, you know, there may well be some companies who have to do some redundancies now, and 6 months down the line, business has picked up, and they may well approach people and say, listen, you know, it was awful time back then. Are you still available? Come back to us. That's bound to happen in some cases. You know, I hope that as many companies as possible can keep their staff. As I said, redundancy should always be your last option, and you have to look at all suitable alternatives. And as I said, talk to your staff, because it may be that they're happy to do unpaid leave. They may be prepared, even though they've been on furlough at 80%, they may say, well, just pay me 50% of our wages, which still has a cost saving for the business. So, you know, because they want to stay, and they want to stay working for them. Or
that's a testament to
time. You know, all those things need to be considered before you look at redundancy. And you have to show a fair process and a fair reason.
And I think as well, when you start to take people back on once they come off the furlough scheme, again, maybe a bit of an uncomfortable conversation to have as an employer, but you could maybe take those people on and say, look, right, we're going to take you on, and we're just going to pay everybody a flat salary across the board. Everyone's going to have, you know, whatever, £1,000 a month or whatever it might be. If that's what we need to do before we start getting business coming in that will actually, you know, fund those salaries and pay for the business to continue. So
we're a resilient, creative lot in travel and tourism.
Yeah.
I'm sure that, you know,
whatever's right for the business. Yeah.
And don't be surprised what people are willing to agree to. You know, that people are actually really open-minded now, and you know, they have, and I think if you keep in touch with them and you are quite open with them, they have quite a good understanding of what you're going through as well as an employer, you know.
Yes. We should probably wrap it up there, guys. Sorry, I'm aware I invited you to a half-an-hour panel and we've been talking for 4 minutes. And also, Claire, I think you're on to another one.
I do have another one.
But very super quickly, because we have got another question from Tim Robinson. Specifically for you, Mel, saying, when do you envisage a bounce back to corporate travel, and will this differ on locations and where they are at in the corona cycle?
Well, you know what, we're trying to, I'm remaining hopefully optimistic at all times. But realistically, I think we're looking at sort of like February, March next year, before we see anything that resembles some kind of normality. I really don't. I think we'll get a steady trickle maybe sort of like October time, maybe a little bit September, October, November, then it'll probably go a bit quiet again for Christmas or whatever. But I think realistically, and unfortunately, it's probably going to be February, March next year. That's my view, before some normality.
Okay. But Bashi, you've been having some more inquiries in the last week, I hear?
We have, yeah, we have.
Green shoots?
Yes, in the TMC world, and luxury tour ops, and sort of OTA, yeah, where they're sort of saying, okay, well, potentially going to be looking for somebody in July, August. We're saying, look, let's look now. We've got an abundance of, there's some great people. We've got the time. Let's do it. And so they're because they put their business plans in place, because they're strategizing and they know where they're going to be, and they're being extremely optimistic. They are wanting us to have a look out there for people. So that's an extremely positive sign and barometer, and I'm hoping may it continue, really. I think that's ending on that is a real positive.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for giving us your time, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon on another.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks, Jen.
Nice weekend.
You too.
Stay safe.
Bye. Bye.